How's it going, you amazing Hylians? It's Jay, and in today's video we're going to be looking at an incredible Zelda interview from way back in 1998 with series creator Shigeru Miyamoto, where he talks about the Zelda Timeline. He also talks about the language behind Zelda, what makes a Zelda game, and also his dislike for a little fairy called Navi. It is an incredible interview, so let's take a look. This interview was first published way back when Ocarina of Time first hit the shelves, so it's a very raw telling of what Nintendo and Miyamoto were thinking when they came up with the very first Zelda 3D game. It is such a great interview. Now, Nintendo have always been a little bit coy when it comes to the Zelda Timeline, but according to Miyamoto, Ocarina of Time was designed to be the very first game in the series. It may have changed a little bit when Skyward Sword came along, but that was the original intention. In the interview, Miyamoto said, "It's meant to be an episode 1 of the Zelda saga. The basic order is Ocarina, then the original Zelda game, followed by A Link to the Past." In a way that really hasn't changed, with only a few games set before it, but interestingly Miyamoto had a lot of questions when working on Ocarina of Time, even wondering about Ganon's backstory. Why is he so hell-bent on destruction? Perhaps something they explored a little bit more in The Wind Waker when they expanded on his motivations. Now, back in the 90s, turn-based RPGs were coming to fruition. We had the amazing Chrono Trigger, we had games like Final Fantasy VII, so where was Zelda's place in all of this? Now, turn-based RPGs may not really apply to Zelda, but it's something that Miyamoto was actually thinking about. Comparing these traditional RPGs to Zelda, he said, "You're confronted with puzzles and mysteries to unravel and powerful enemies to face, and it's the immediacy of the experience that's more engaging, and that's what I want players to come away with. It's that satisfying feeling that fed into the game's difficulty, with the team worried a little bit about the action being a little bit too difficult, but early feedback from players reassured Miyamoto, with players suggesting that it was tough, but very satisfying." And speaking of difficulties and hints, Miyamoto did comment on Navi, the use of Navi and her kind of, broken hint system in Ocarina of Time. "I know it makes it sound bad, but we purposefully left her at a kind of stupid level. I think if we tried to make Navi's hints a bit more sophisticated, that stupidity would have stood out even more." He kind of noted how Navi was originally meant to be a reminder for those who hadn't played the game in a few months, in a while, and if they tailored it more to the player's situation, it would be incredibly difficult to manage all these different scenarios. And probably one of the most important questions, Miyamoto was asked in the interview, what makes a Zelda game? What is the quintessential Zelda formula? That secret formula where when you see the game you're like, that is definitely a Zelda game. Novelty, mystery, and a certain imitable quality. The truth is, you can analyse it from an infinite number of viewpoints, I think. Recurring elements and a style make Zelda what it is, and the development team is always encouraged to add their own Zelda things, according to Miyamoto. One good example are the scenes with Epona in the game, who was created by Mario series producer Yoshiaki Kojimi, the perfect example of adding Zelda-ness to the game. And speaking of Zelda-ness, Miyamoto also touched upon the use of magic in the game. He confirmed what we've seen in beta versions of Ocarina of Time. These medallions were originally used to cast 5 or 6 magic spells, but they didn't really leave a strong impression on Miyamoto. He felt that magic could really be making things a little bit too easy for players. One thing that Ocarina of Time really pioneered and added to that Zelda formula was the new dungeon structure and that language of what makes a Zelda dungeon. Classic 2D Zelda games had that maze approach, where you go from room to room, backtracking and beating enemies. Each dungeon followed that very, very similar and same language. Miyamoto and the team wanted players to feel as if they were really wandering and exploring these dungeons in 3D. Instead of mapping your way through a maze, I think what's most important is a sense of dread, a sense of pressure, and of course an opportunity for finding secrets and solving puzzles. We should be pursuing an emotional immediacy. Another change in the Zelda language came through the combat. You've got this now 3D space to fight in. Interestingly, Miyamoto really wasn't actually happy with the sword combat in the final game and wanted to have a system where players could improve and develop their sword skills throughout the journey. But it became a little bit too complex, so the team had to strip it back, revisiting it over a decade later in Skyward Sword. With all these brand new elements added to the Zelda formula in the new 3D setting, Miyamoto really wanted to establish a bit of trust with the players, where players could explore these environments and even break them. There's lots of patterns and combinations with the enemies and items, and sometimes we just run out of time to check everything, and unintended things emerge. We'll often intentionally leave them in though. It's part of that relationship of trust between user and creator that's unique to the interactive medium of video games. And that really fed into the way Link interacts with the environment, for example using the Megaton hammer in that very iconic battle in the water temple, or even running up to a cliff. Nintendo actually programmed these jumps so players would trust in the game's design to make sure Link would actually land in one piece. It is such an amazing insight into how Zelda works. And there we go, a little insight into how Nintendo were thinking way back then when coming up with the 3D Zelda formula and building on the success of those amazing 2D games. It's such a great thing to see, and it really is a true testament to how good Nintendo are at developing games. So what did you think of this incredible Zelda interview? The full thing is below, definitely check it out and let us know what you think with a comment. If you enjoyed this video, then be sure to hit the like button. And if you want to see more Zelda, more Nintendo, more geeky, more gaming videos, be sure to hit that subscribe button. And also check out our Discord. We want you to join the conversation on our Discord. Links are below. And before you move on to the next video, be sure to check out our exclusive merch, geeky gaming designs voted for by you. A big thank you for all your support. Links are below. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.